Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here with another episode of Wrestling Wednesday. This week, of course, we're going to talk about Survivor Series this past weekend and the results. I, once again, lost in my never-ending quest to give Cameron Abbott all of the Portillos he can, muster. So that was, annoying. But I only lost by 1 point this time, so I guess it's better? And I also got screwed by the kind of tease of when I did my predictions that there might be a mystery person coming into the SmackDown team on the women's side. If I had known that it was going to be Natalya and locked in, I would have been like, yeah, nobody's going to beat Asuka. Anyway, getting ahead of myself, let's run through Survivor Series bit by bit. Up first in the pre-show, we had an impromptu match between Matt Hardy and Elias, where Elias won. They didn't announce this match until like an hour before, so I think I was probably having Portillo's with Cameron, but when this match got announced. So yeah, I wasn't even really going to tune in for the pre-show this time around. And then I saw oh, Matt Hardy is doing something. I was like, okay, I guess I'll check it out. It was another one of those matches where there's no hard cam because the doors had just opened 20 minutes ago, and so nobody was in the arena yet. And ultimately, Elias here took the win for, a very abysmal crowd. But gave Matt Hardy something to do while Jeff is out recovering from his shoulder surgery, I think. Up next, we had the Cruiserweight Championship match, which was, announced going into Survivor Series between Enzo and Kalisto. And, of course, Enzo here took the win. I just kind of expected that was going to happen. Match was not really anything to write home about, so it wasn't really catching my eye or anything. So, Cruiserweight. We've gotten, in the days since, we've gotten the call-up from NXT of Hideo Itami, I believe. Big New Japan wrestler who got brought over and then kind of got plagued the last few years by injury after injury, but it looks like now he's coming to 205 Live, so I imagine Enzo has basically been the placeholder champion until he could get into place, and now that he's there, I imagine they'll be putting it on him before too long, and, maybe try and build up the Cruiserweight Championship again. Then lastly, in the pre-show, we had the other impromptu match of Breezango versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Of course, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens were going to win this one, but it was good seeing Breezango wrestle again. They've been pretty much confined to their little fashion police segments for the last, I don't know how long. The last time I even remember them wrestling was, I think, against the Usos, where they just kind of constantly swapped out of outfits, and you had Granny Tyler Breeze and Janitor Tyler Breeze, and they just were playing with their little gimmicks and a mop and stuff. So it was nice to have them back in the ring here, even if it was just kind of serving them up as cannon fodder to Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. On Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, also kind of continuing on into the week, we had the... they were here on the pre-show in a very, unhyped match. And then you had the Lumberjack match with them on Tuesday, and, the threat of them being fired and whatnot. And I think that probably kind of fuels the rumors of them actually having some backstage heat. As the rumor goes, while they were on the European tour and they took a loss, they were supposed to also take a beating after that loss from the New Day, but they backed out of the ring. They ran out of the ring and just started going up the ramp. So the New Day didn't get kind of the face moment against the heels, and after that they were sent home from the European tour early. So kind of taking that, it definitely looks like this is kind of the WWE's way of hazing them, throwing them into this Lumberjack match against the New Day. So the New Day did get their final kind of slam on that, even though Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens took the win here on Tuesday. You did have kind of them getting beat up by the whole roster in a very similar way to when Enzo was dealing with all of his heat. You had that Cruiserweight Lumberjack match in the same boat where everybody just kind of got to beat up on Enzo. It seems like that's kind of how they're dealing with Wrestlers Court these days, where you've got just kind of people get their heat, and then they get thrown into a squash match with everybody else, kind of standing around them, ready to kind of throw their punches. Anyway, back to Survivor Series. We kicked off with the Shield versus the New Day, and once again, the New Day really came out here, and they've been great MVPs in pretty much every pay-per-view match I've seen of theirs this year. They always kill it, and they got the crowd fired up and ready to go, and there was great kind of back and forth in their match against the Shield. There was definitely, and this has also happened in a lot of the New Day matches this year, where randomly, like, different people get called as, like, the legal men than are. So, that's odd. There was a point in there where just suddenly, like, Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston, I believe, were the legal men, even though they hadn't really been tagged in. It was like Xavier and Dean Ambrose or something like that. But whatever. It felt like a bit like they were skipping ahead in the match booking a bit to kind of get to that point. Whatever the case may be, it was still a very entertaining match. Very good match. Of course, the Shield went over as you expected them to on their first pay-per-view back, since Roman was out for TLC. But yeah, good match all around. New Day has continued to be just incredibly entertaining, even in their losses at pay-per-views this year. Then we went on to the women's 5v5 match, and again, as I mentioned kind of up front, if I had known that it was just going to be Natalya when I made my predictions, instead of leaving like, oh, there might be a surprise return or something like that, I would have just been like, no, Team Raw is going to win this, because there wasn't any other reason to knock out Asuka. And sure enough, you had Asuka kind of the lone survivor for her team here and taking out like a 2-on-1 scenario at the end. I felt like people like Becky Lynch kind of got the short shrift on this one. Sure, these matches always need like somebody to be the first one eliminated, but I feel like Becky's been underserved as of late, and that was sad to see her pitched as the captain and one of the dominant people on this team, and for her to immediately kind of go out at the beginning of the match was underwhelming for me as a fan of hers. So with that, Raw was up 2-0 in the whole Survivor Series count. So it was actually a pretty good bet at this point that the match between The Miz and Baron Corbin was going to go to Baron Corbin, because they didn't want it to go up 3-0, because of course they're going to keep it 3-3 at the end. And then leave it all come down to the final match. And that's going to come up into play one more time here as we get to kind of the end of the card. So despite Baron Corbin having been booked against Sin Cara the last month, they went ahead and gave him the win here over The Miz. And then The Miz also lost his championship to Roman Reigns on Monday. So been a big, busy week for Miz. Reports are that Miz is going to go off and shoot the next Marine movie. So it makes sense that you'd want to kind of get the belt off him before he goes off air for a little while. But yeah, still, he shouldn't. I think he's been the one who's been booked stronger than Corbin going in. But giving Corbin the win here, I guess, hopefully helps him, establish or, some sense of dominance, even though he's terrible on the mic and probably just shouldn't be the champion. And given that during the Lumberjack match, they threw in kind of a mini feud there between Corbin and Bobby Roode, my guess is that Baron Corbin is just kind of a placeholder at this point until Bobby Roode comes in and becomes the next U.S. champion. Then we went into the Tag Team Championship match, Sheamus and Cesaro versus the Usos, and this was another great match. The Usos, knocked it out of the park, as they've been doing a lot recently as well. Cesaro and Sheamus also had a great showing here. Weren't as many highlight spot moments as you had with the Shield versus New Day opening up the show, but this was a solid tag team versus tag team match, and Usos came out on top. With things tied at 2, we went into the Women's Championship match, Alexa Bliss versus Charlotte Flair, and sure enough, continuing on her recent victory on SmackDown, Charlotte Flair ends up going over Alexa Bliss here, and that was, I think, the right call. I think Alexa is great on the mic, but not as great in the ring, so I think Charlotte taking the win here was the good call. And then also in the women's division, kind of in the aftermath here, we've had NXT call-ups on both SmackDown and Raw. in the following days. Paige did indeed come back. She just came back on Monday with a couple NXT people, and then Ruby Riott and a couple other NXT people came to SmackDown on Tuesday. So weird that they basically did the exact same thing on both shows, 24 hours after one another. Hopefully this is trying to make the field a little bit more crowded so that you have enough people going into a Royal Rumble event that you can do a men's and women's Royal Rumble. That's certainly, I think, the most interesting possible outcome out of all of this. I don't know any of the NXT people that have been called up, because they haven't been in like the NXT takeover scene, which is all I've really seen the last couple showings. So none of these people were really. They seemed to be the lower card NXT women, but hopefully this gives them a nice little spotlight and kind of shakes things up in the women's cards. So with SmackDown up 3-2, this was another one of those places where as soon as they said that, okay, Brock Lesnar and AJ Styles are the next match, I was like, well, I guess they're giving this to Brock after all, because they're not going to put SmackDown up 4-2 going into the 5 versus 5. So, of course, they were going to have Raw tie things up here with Lesnar, and that was annoying. And the way the match started out with Brock just relentlessly beating on AJ was also annoying. I appreciated that they gave AJ a little bit of offense and whatnot at the end, but it was so too little too late for a guy who has, very publicly saved their ass so recently, having come into TLC after Bray Wyatt was removed from TLC in his Sister Abigail thing. AJ coming into that a month ago. He deserved better than this, and I still stand by giving AJ the win here. Would have done nothing to hurt Brock. It would have still left Brock in the position to put, ultimately, Roman Reigns over, because that's what Vince McMahon is stuck to. And he comes out and complains that, things are getting stale. It's like, well, yeah, things are stale, but not where you think they're stale, Vince. They're stale at your top card. You had Jinder as the champion for 6 months, which is 5 months longer than he should have been, or 6 months longer than he should have been. And you've had Brock Lesnar, the champion, since WrestleMania, and that's just been a terrible, terrible call for that. It just makes me mad. So AJ should have got the win here. They didn't give it to him because they want to keep Brock Lesnar protected, because Vince McMahon likes big sweaty men, as the chant goes. So lastly, we had the men's 5-on-5 match, and this was just not great. This was a bad match. You took out the new call-ups for SmackDown in Shinsuke and Bobby Roode. They were the first two people eliminated, making it a 5-on-3. There were a couple of interesting pairing moments, but ultimately they just turned this into like old guys versus old guys, and that was disappointing, especially when we got down to like the 3-on-2 of Kurt Angle, Triple H, and Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon and Randy Orton. Then you got down to 3-on-1 against Shane McMahon, and then you had the weird ending with Triple H knocking out Kurt Angle just so he could take the pin, and they could do like a double swerve in that moment. It was just a dumb, stupid ending. Very underwhelming finish, and yeah, disappointing overall. I think, I don't know why you brought John Cena back for this, if he was just going to be kind of cannon fodder for, a couple minutes in the match and then out. And they had an opportunity here to put some of the younger guys over, and they botched it. So another disappointing end, and that's what left, a bad taste in my mouth over Survivor Series. I think the last two matches, the wrong people won. And yeah, that's frustrating. It's not even that I think necessarily that SmackDown should have won. I think you should have had the men's 5-on-5 first, so you'd have that tie things up, and then you have Brock versus AJ to close things out, and it'd be a little bit more interesting. But ultimately, again, I say AJ should have won that as well. So the fact that this came down to Triple H, Kurt Angle, and Shane McMahon, with Braun Strowman just looking on confused, is just like the epitome of what is wrong with WWE right now. but it's also clearly what they're going for. So, boo. So those are my thoughts on Survivor Series. I also went and watched War Games after Survivor Series. I was out at a show on Saturday night, so I missed War Games as it was happening. But holy hell, that was a really good show. And good on the NXT people for making the most of that opportunity that they get on all these takeover shows. Lots of great matches in there. The War Games match especially, it was just like, oh god, that was brutal to watch. But just great ring storytelling. So definitely check out War Games if you haven't. Certainly the superior of the two pay-per-views in my opinion. So let me know what you thought about Survivor Series in the comments below. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey. You can follow me at SnarkyStarkey on Twitter. And until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.